Hello guys, this is Doronsmovies and welcome to the first specific role-playing guide. So today I'll be covering the orcs and teaching you how to roleplay an orc in World of Warcraft. So in this video, I will cover a few points and I will also help you set up your orc and just showing you what sort of a story you can pick and sort of styles you can roleplay as an orc in the game. But first, let's just start off with a quick look into the orcish lore and their basic culture. So, as you may know, the orcs originate from the world known as Draenor and have been there for thousands of years. I don't think they came from another planet. I think they originate from that planet, or maybe they'll come up with something, but that is the current lore. Now, despite a lot of people thinking they're like these evil, warmongering, just simple-minded creatures, they are actually quite opposite when you look a bit more into their lore. Now, originally, orcs were peaceful, traditional people, and they did live for a long time in peace with the Draenei, and even made a few silent trades here and there. So, religion-wise, they worship their ancestors, nature, the elements, thus, shamanism is quite big with the orc. Now, unlike the other races, they have some quite distinct values, and the value they respect the most is honor, as you might have probably noticed, from hearing orcs, or just playing the game. Now, in the orcish society, honorless orcs are looked down upon and they're just in the lowest levels of their society. Now, orcs are known to just fight with honor, never fight an enemy when he's down, and also show respect towards the enemy. Also, one of their biggest honors is to die in battle, thus a common war cry is Lok Tarogar, if you heard about that, and that pretty much means victory or death. So, kind of means that they won't retreat, that they will just die. So, unlike in other cultures, orc males and females are actually quite equal, and they're pretty much the same. So, there isn't like a distinct, difference between the two. And both males and females, fight and are just called to war, when a time calls. Alright, so let's go into a few types of orcs and a few personalities. So, of course, you can play the orc as you want. I mean, you can make the whole point of role-playing is, you're making your own character. But I'm just going to give you some basic guidelines here. So, first of all, you have the passive diplomatic orcs. Now, these orcs are actually quite rare and they're pretty much, the Droll type, quite similar to Droll. They can also be called wise orcs and peaceful orcs, I guess. But they believe in peace and harmony between all races and don't actually, think that fighting is the only way to do something. I mean, they respect all races and also believe, things can change and things can be done in a peaceful way, without wasting lives and killing people. Now, if you choose this personality, you could go about it in a few ways. First would be, playing a passive orc, which would be, just a very peaceful orc that is kind of very gullible, meaning that he would be friendly with anyone and would trust a lot of people, even though they might not have the same intentions as that orc. Although this would be a really rare, RP style for an orc, because you don't really find that many, friendly, peaceful orc. Now, the other way of, going about it is RPing like a passive, yet a very smart and a cunning orc. This type of an orc would believe in peace and everything in that manner, but he wouldn't just trust anyone so easily, meaning that he is actually tolerant towards other races, but he just doesn't trust anyone, that he talks to. Also, this type of an orc is very loyal. So, for example, if he's in a battle, he would be the first one to give his life in order to, save his fellow clan member. Now, on the other side, you have like the aggressive orcs, and pretty obviously they're the most common orc type. I mean, you could relate Gromhellscream and Garrosh, his son, and Blackhand, and a few other important figures here and there to this type. Now, this type of orc doesn't really, believe in peace, and is kind of very short-tempered, usually, very racist toward other races, and overall, just not very tolerant. Of course, as with any, you can roleplay this in a few ways. Now, first would be actually the passive-aggressive orc. Now, this type of an orc, he is kind of tolerant towards others and can also be friendly. However, he has a very short temper and, isn't scared to fight any orc or any enemy if he feels like he's challenged. Now the second type would be just a straight out aggressive type of an orc. Now this orc is more like Garrosh, meaning that he's racist, he takes offense very easily, and he isn't afraid to fight anyone, to challenge anyone in a duel. Usually, these orcs aren't like super intelligent and are very short-sighted, hot-headed. So if you ever roleplay an orc like this, make sure to be good at PvP, as I did this before, and usually when you play like an aggressive type of an orc, you're gonna get in a lot of duels and a lot of challenges. So make sure to be decent at PvP, good at PvP, as it will probably resort to a duel, and if you lose, it isn't really best for the orc. This type of an orc isn't really a forgiving, peaceful orc. Alright, and the third type would be the intelligent aggressive orc. Now you could say Gul'dan is one of these types. Now this type of an orc isn't really, very powerful or strong in any way, like physically, on the outside, but is actually very smart and cunning on the inside. And usually these types of orcs don't show any aggressiveness, on the outside, but when they're given a chance, they can be a lot deadlier and can cause a lot more destruction than these previous types. So, you can do a few of these, but these were just a few, basic orc styles you can roleplay with. I mean, you can, but you shouldn't, just stick to these styles. I'm pretty much just providing you this as kind of, guidelines, so you can work on your own character personality, from one of these. Alright, and next on the list are clans, and clans are very, very important in the orcish culture, and pretty much any orc that you can see today originates from some type of a clan. Not all of the clans are big, such as WARSONG or the FROSTWOLF clan, but the clans are very, important in the orcish culture, and there are a bunch of them. So in this video, I will only show you a few bigger ones, but of course, you can research others by yourself, because there are a lot of them, and it takes a lot of time to cover all of them. And you can even make up your own clans. Not all of the clans are known. So in this video, I'm just going to show a few very important and very big clans. Also, I made a few lore lessons covering one of these, so you can also check them out on my channel. Alright, so first would be the Warsong clan. Now Warsong clan is one of the strongest orcish clans, and they actually managed to evade alliance capture for a very long time. They never actually got captured, and they were led by their very, very famous leader, Grom Hellscream, all the way, until the original horde was built by, Troll, and they settled in Durotar. Now later on, Garrosh took the lead of the Warsong clan, although I believe the current leader is unknown, because, well, Garrosh pretty much went on like a crazy streak, and I don't think anyone said who will be the leader of the Warsong clan. Now, if you want to roleplay a Warsong orc, you should probably pick the aggressive style, because, most Warsong orcs are very similar to their chieftain, so a lot of Warsong orcs are very similar, to Grom Hellscream. Now, suggested classes for this clan would be like most likely melee fighters, so such as, warriors and rogues. Although Warsong orcs are quite known, they're known to be very skillful with weapons, such as swords and axes, mostly axes. And they can also, be blade masters, just masters of blades. That obviously makes sense. But yeah, if you want to play a Warsong orc, you should probably, stick with one of these melee clans. Alright, next on the list is the FROSTWOLF clan. Now, FROSTWOLF clan is another very famous orcish clan. Now, they were led by Duratan and were one of the only orcs, to not succumb to the corruption. For that, they were exiled by the horde, and later on, throughout the wars, they were hiding under the leadership of Drektar, for like, I believe, 20 years or something, until Dral found them and just took the leadership, as the son of Duratan. Now, if you want to roleplay a FROSTWOLF orc, you should probably, go with a passive RP style, something similar to Dral, something more diplomatic. Although, some FROSTWOLF orcs are just as bloodthirsty as the others, but, they aren't as bad as, some of the other clans. Also, for classes, I would suggest maybe shamans, warriors, and mostly hunters, as the FROSTWOLVES have a great relationship with their wolves, so hunters would be kind of great with that. Okay, next on the list is the BLACKROCK clan. Now this clan is a bit different from the other clans, as it actually had quite a big role in, in the first and the second war. And the war chief of the first horde, Blackhand, was also the chieftain of the BLACKROCK clan. And it is the same, for Orgrim Doomhammer, as, he was both a war chief of the horde, the combined clans and the BLACKROCK clan. So they are one of the main clans, in the wars. Now, a lot of clan, a big part of the clan got corrupted, and is even functional, the corrupted part in some parts. But, most of the BLACKROCK orcs you see today are the ones, that joined the troll when he found the horde, when he founded the horde. So, for example, Varrock Sarfang, Etrig, and a few others. So, if you want to roleplay a BLACKROCK clan orc, you will most likely, have to go for something like that, to be one of those orcs that droll freed as a slave. Now, suggested classes for the BLACKROCK clan would be mainly, warriors and rogues, as they, like the WARSONG clan, are, very skilled when it comes to, like, weapons and war. Alright, and the last one I'm going to cover is the Shattered Hand clan. And the Shattered Hand clan is, well known for self-mutilation, because obviously you can tell that from the name, Shattered Hand. And they, just like the Warsong clan, had quite a similar fate. They were stranded on Azeroth. Most of the orcs, from that clan are the same as the BLACKROCK orcs. And they joined, Droll when he freed them from the slave camps. Now, suggested classes for this, clan would be warriors, as this clan is kind of perfect if you're looking to play like a berserker. So, as I mentioned previously, there is a bunch of other clans as well, like the Laughing Skull clan, the Bleeding Hollow clan, Thunder Lord clan, I believe. And, they have a lot of lore, but, I can't really cover everything, but I have a few lore lessons on my channel. So, you can check that out and, see if, those clans are something you're interested in. Now, on the other hand, you can also roleplay that you're from some other evil clans, that are still enemies of the Horde, so, you don't have to actually be Horde friendly if you're a role player. You kind of have your hands free, and that can even actually make quite interesting roleplay. So, for example, you can organize PvP fights, with, righteous guilds that are under the Horde, and you can be one of these evil clans or whatnot. So you don't have to stick to the current Horde. And another way of going about it, I guess, is, roleplaying a lone wolf. Although, that kind of works to some extent, but doesn't really always work fully. Alright, and last I'm going to, cover some classes, and, that are spread out through the Orcish society. So, first and most well known is the Orc Warrior. And Orc Warrior, he is a very honorable individual, and, is known to be the first one in the battle. They usually wield one or two weapons, and in most cases, are physically bigger and stronger, compared to other classes. And I believe I haven't mentioned it yet, but, orcs are usually, from 6 to 8.5 feet tall, I believe. That's like, 200 centimeters to like 300 centimeters, I believe. So they're pretty big. And if you're playing an Orc Warrior, you can also, be bigger than the other Orc. Now, usually Orc Warrior is an aggressive type, and it only, takes a few seconds for them to get in range. However, you can always, RP them as like these wide blade masters that use all their senses to find the enemy, something like the samurai. However, that usually isn't always the case with, most warriors, so it's pretty rare. Also, one of the subclasses for the warriors could be the, the barbarians and the berserkers. And, these are kind of these orcs that can be the first one to go to battle. They don't really have any fear or care what is going to happen to them, and they're mostly, relying to their inner bloodlust. So if you're looking to play like a berserker, you should probably stick to like an Orc Warrior and, pick one of those clans as I mentioned before. Alright, next would be the Hunter, and in the Orcish culture, all orcs are actually known as hunters. I mean, all of the orcs learn to hunt and have to hunt in order to survive. However, hunters, as we know them today, are usually warriors that have a companion by their side, and role-playing a hunter can actually work in quite a few ways. So, first would be, playing just a ranged warrior that is using like a bow or a rifle, and that is kind of relying on his companion. Also, being very skilled in like tracking and setting traps, and just nature stuff, survival. So, even though, as I said, all orcs are hunters, if you're, role-playing this type of a hunter, you can be, a more experienced individual in hunting and all of that. Another way of doing it is you could also play as a raider, I don't know. It's the unit from Warcraft 3. Now, this would probably, relate a bit better to the warriors, but, the hunters actually have a unique relationship with their companions, so you can also, do this, you can kind of pull it off, with a hunter. Alright, next and very important is the shaman, and the shamans are actually the most respected, members of the orcish society, and they call upon the elements and ask them for aid in certain situations. Usually a shaman would be like a passive type, like a diplomatic, as they care a lot about the nature and the elements. I mean, you can also be a dark shaman, but I'm just saying in the general sense. They're also, very wise and experienced, so if you're looking to play a shaman, it would be a great choice, for an orc, because, they're very important in the orcish society. Alright, and lastly you have the rogues and warlocks and the mages, although the mages are a bit of a different case. Now, the rogues and the warlocks, these two classes are like the bottom of the orcish society, and if you plan on RPing one of these, be prepared to kind of be looked down upon by the other orcs. Although, you can always use the rogue class and as some sort of like a blade master or a weapon specialist or like an honorable assassin, if that even exists. But, generally rogues are usually, dark and are used as assassins, such as Garona Halforkin. They're not really known to, fight with honor, unlike the warriors who just face an enemy, straight to his face. Now, warlocks on the other hand are different, they're a different case, as most of them were shamans before. They were very respected by their, community. Now, they succumbed to dark magics, and a lot of orcs don't like warlocks because they are the main reason why the orcs got corrupted in the first place, and they pretty much just represent pure evil, in their eyes. So usually rogues and warlocks would be a Gul'dan type, meaning that they aren't very strong, physically, but are very cunning and, would use any opportunity, to kill their enemies when they aren't looking, in their direction. And as I mentioned mage previously, I mean, you can roleplay mage, mage is newly introduced, and they learn the arcane magics from other races, but most orcs don't really have an opinion on that and are kind of scared of the mages because they are just not used to these types of magics, as shamanism and warrior and hunters, that's pretty much what they're used to in their society. So that is pretty much, for the classes, and there is quite a few subclasses you can do, but, these are the classes that are, main classes and that you can play, as I really can't cover, all of the subclasses, and I mean, you can even make up certain subclasses. Alright, and just before I end this video, I'm going to give you some tips on which gear you should pick for your orc. Now, back on Draenor, as you may know, most orcs, wore leather as they were hunters, and whatever, they can craft from the animals they hunted, so they use their hides, so, they mostly wore leather, and, they weren't really all that big on armor. However, during the wars and the formation of the first horde, they got used to wearing heavy, metal armor. So if you're playing as a shaman or a rogue or even a warlock, it is suggested to get some sort of, leather armor. Although, orcs usually aren't fully covered, so in most cases, they have some skin showing, so, they're not, fully covered. Now, while warriors and a few other similar classes can wear either, full metal armor or leather, they can also wear leather and metal mixed in. Now, also another important part of the orcish gear is the helmet, and, orcs usually wear, these metal helmets, or these wolf heads, on their head, obviously. So if you want to roleplay a tribal orc, I would suggest, or even a shaman, I would suggest, picking up a wolf, head, sort of a helmet, and you can find a few of these, and most of, people in my guild use those, and as they're very important, in the orcish culture. Now, another very important part, if not the most important part, are the weapons. Now, these should be pretty much, the main focus when role-playing as an orc. Now, orcs, usually use axes. However, they can also, be skillful with polearms or swords or spears, I don't know. But, they mostly use axes. But if you want to go just for a straight-out orc, I would suggest, picking up a big sturdy axe. So, if you're a shaman or a warlock, you can also use some sort of a staff or I don't know, a book maybe. But, you know, usually you can use even fist weapons, you know, as that is what they usually wear, you know, the shamans, and I think they wore that in Warcraft 3. But usually axe is pretty much like a trademark of the orc. Alright, so I hope that helped you out on setting up your orc, you know, and getting it ready for some roleplay. Now, do give me some feedback on this series, and also tell me, you know, which races would you like to see covered next. You know, currently my next plan are the trolls, although, you know, that should happen in a few weeks. But anyways, you know, thanks for watching, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe, and also, you know, give me some feedback on what you think as I mentioned previously. See you next time.